Welcome to the University of Michigan Dentistry Podcast Series, promoting oral health care worldwide.
There are varying types and degrees of handicapping conditions. Some, such as blindness, are apparent and have affected an individual since birth. Some may result from home accidents. Still others may result from spinal cord injuries and require well-organized programs of rehabilitation through recreation. Some handicaps are hidden handicaps, such as epilepsy, diabetes, and deafness. For example, did you know that Bobby Clark, the hockey player, has diabetes and yet still is able to play hockey? Or that Beethoven has written his best music, although he's partially deaf? Still others can be handicapped by the effects of old aging. In Minnesota, the handicapped population numbers between 300,000 and 400,000 individuals. Estimates range from 10 to 20% of our state's population as having a handicap of one sort or another. Most of these people reside in the metropolitan Twin City area. Now then, what does all of this have to do with dentistry and dental students? For the handicapped, very often, accessibility to dental offices is a problem, and often the most qualified and competent clinician may be inaccessible because of architectural barriers such as stairs or lack of adequate toilet facilities. The Division of Pediatric Dentistry has received a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for the purpose of enhancing care opportunities for the handicapped in Minnesota. During an initial review of the problem, it became obvious that dental treatment procedures for the handicapped differ very little from treatment procedures for the non-handicapped. Dental caries, for example, requires very similar types of preparation and restorations. The major problem really lies in attitudinal and architectural barriers which exist or are unwittingly created. We are often complacent in our sensitivity to the problems which the handicapped encounter until we ourselves become handicapped for some period of time. A skiing accident, for example, requires an alteration of our normal movements during the healing process, and we become very much aware of our limited mobility. Or during an eye exam when pupils are dilated. For some time afterwards, our visual acuity is severely limited, and we become highly aware of our dependence on normal vision for our day-to-day activities. It is during these experiences that sensitivity to the problems of the handicapped increase. Unfortunately, however, this increased awareness is oftentimes short-lived. The purpose of this videotape is to describe a program which has been developed in the Division of Pediatric Dentistry as a voluntary exercise for the purpose of increasing an awareness of and sensitivity to some of the problems which the handicapped must overcome in order to function effectively in the non-handicapped society, especially as it is related to seeking and receiving optimal dental care. Dental students who are interested will be asked to spend a half-day confined to a wheelchair and given a route through the health science area and specific tasks to attempt. Every phase of this experience is quite reasonable from the point of view of a handicapped individual. In order to demonstrate this concept, we have filmed a second-year dental student, Mark Jensen, during his travels in a wheelchair about the University of Minnesota Health Science campus. Afterwards, we will have a discussion with Mark as to some of the feelings and frustrations which he encountered, both physical and emotional. In addition, we'll ask him what considerations in dental office design would be important to him having had this experience. The goal, of course, is to make you increasingly aware of architectural barriers which might be easily altered or totally eliminated in order to make dental offices and dental care more accessible to the handicapped. As you view this film, try to put yourself in Mark's position in a wheelchair and try to get in touch with some of his feelings and frustrations. This one has to park his car in.
You started out with a little roughness. Did you think you were going to go out?
That's one of the hardest things to do, I think. The ice is really slick.
You didn't have studs in your tires, huh?
No, those tires are really slick and the wheels just keep moving. It's a real struggle to get up over a curb like this, and especially when it's uphill like this. Finally make it, but boy, it's a real struggle.
Good life in Minnesota.
A little longer than you thought it would be.
Yeah, this is also difficult too. It's slick.
You're lucky you had pneumatic tires. They had treads on them.
I was having a little trouble here flagging someone down to open the door for me.
In our fully accessible building.
There's no way I could go through the revolving door there.
Just to stick up for you, Paul, it happens even in the building that, we're filming this segment in. It's nice of you to open the door for me. Kind of wish you'd hurry up going up that ramp, though.
Looks like you're going to be late for your dental appointment, so you better call and let the dentist know you're going to be a few minutes late.
That's a little bit of a reach to get up there. The chair won't fit into the booth.
That was one of the older elevators, but they're really pretty common with the switches up really high.
You only have to go up one flight of stairs. Wouldn't you rather just run up?
I would. There's no way you can do it unless there's an elevator or a ramp. It's a little bit hard to reach up. I can see if you were a very short person, I doubt if you could reach those buttons.
You really find a lot of difference with doors. Some may be heavy, but once you get them swinging open, then they're pretty easy. But
It'll be a long time in the dental chair, Mark.
It's a little tough to get in this restroom with two doors that way. Finally get in there. It's a little bit tight.
do you really think you could get in?
I thought I could. There's no way that dental chair is going to go into that.
Good thing those sinks are there.
You could always go down on the floor and then back up on the stool.
Two doors there. It's a little hard to get in now.
Now that you've taken care of your duty, you can have some water, huh?
It looks easy, but when you try to do it, you find out that it's a little harder to get a drink than you'd think. Water drips down on your face.
The best place to get a drink out of a fountain's in an elementary school. They're all 2 feet off the floor.
Okay, so now you finally arrived at the dental office and you come into the reception area.
Did you sit in front of the regular chairs, or was there a spot for you?
No, that's just out in the center of the area. Sometimes the doors aren't always placed so it's easy to get in and out. Some of those doors are a little hard to open too.
Yeah. I think what you're going to be going through now is some of the more typical kinds of dental facilities, unless you actually get into one of the new ones that have been built in the last 3-4 years.
I think obviously if the tube head had been long enough, we would have been able to just use the wheelchair.
Space is a little tight in there. It's hard to maneuver around. You can see that the arm doesn't move, and we finally moved the chair a little bit to get the right angle for a transfer.
I have to admit you did a pretty nice job on the transfers, although, you know, even in this segment you can see the use of your legs coming in there, and you have to really be in touch with, you know, the severely disabled aren't going to be able to use their legs and make it be that easy.
Brake on there. I'm Paul Walker from the Division of Pediatric Dentistry at the University of Minnesota, and with me are John Schatzline from the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, and our star, Mark Jensen, a second-year dental student here at the University of Minnesota. John, how did Mark impress you on his travels?
Well, I think in the beginning, Mark was really willing, and he remained willing throughout the whole, you know, filming and all of this. I think partly because I didn't tell him what was going on, he was a little bit anxious about what was happening. He kept talking to me and saying, all right, what's going to happen next, and all of this kind of thing. And it was really neat the way he showed his involvement, and hopefully we can get a number of other students to do this. I guess I always wondered what Mark thought was maybe the toughest thing during the 2 days of filming.
Well, I don't know if I could say there was a toughest part. I think it's obvious that physically it was hard, but I think there's a lot more that goes with it. And from the very beginning, I noticed that when we were waiting to go down an elevator at the very start, one of the doctors there was staring at my legs and shoes, and I knew he was very conscious of me. I felt awfully conspicuous.
Mm-hmm. How was it tough physically?
Well, physically, out on the ice and snow, it's the wheels spin, and it's really hard, especially to go uphill. It's pretty obviously hard on your hands. I had blisters on my hand when I was done, and I was a little sore the next day because I wasn't used to using some of those muscles.
I remember a couple of times during when we were down in the cafeteria, you ran into a couple of your classmates. How'd you feel about running into them and, you know, being exposed to seeing them on a different level?
Well, a lot of them would come up and at first, you know, ask what happened, was I in an accident or whatever, and then after I tried to explain it, they want to know how they could do it or get involved, whatever. But in other instances, in one in particular, when we were going down an elevator, one of the students in my class came onto the elevator, and I was right there, and looked at the chair and my legs and everything, but wouldn't look me in the eye, and as a consequence, he was standing right next to me, and I had to say something to him before he looked at me and recognized who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did you feel that getting to a dental appointment was going to be more of a problem for a handicapped individual than for an able-bodied person?
Definitely. I became very aware of steps and snow and ice, as you saw in the film, but also that doorways have to be wide enough to get open, and
you can't always take the most direct route also.
Right. You find yourself coming to a set of stairways and you can't get up and walk. You have to find a ramp.
What about just common things that you find in buildings like telephones and washroom facilities? Did you find yourself being frustrated by these?
Well, maybe not so much frustrated as becoming aware of it. I thought I was just going to go in and wheel the chair up to where I wanted to go, and as you saw in the film, in several instances, you can't take the chair there. There's just no way. So in that respect, it's difficult.
Maybe we could look at some slides, John.
Yeah, what we'll have is we have some still shots of some of the various things that you saw in the film already. And during the stills, perhaps we could get some of your reactions, Mark, to what it was really like during those particular segments.
Well, I guess right here, contrast is pretty obvious between the film and here, where I could reach right down to this phone and pick it up. And when I did pick it up, I noticed that I never knew before that there's a button on the phone also for loud, extra loud, and you can adjust the phone as well as easy access. And you see, I didn't have to reach or anything here.
How about the steepest ramp that we could find during your travels? Did you notice a difference in the one that was on the film and this one?
There's a difference. You definitely have to balance, lean forward, and you don't just work your way up real fast like you were walking. You become aware of that there's more of an incline there than you thought before.
Did you have a feeling that you might tip over backwards?
Yes, I did. In a few instances I think you were aware of that I almost did. Some of these doors were really heavy. I guess you have to learn how to position your weight and arms to get through them, as you can see here.
Well, you're talking about balance, and I think it's really important to point out that you have to become accustomed, and you develop your own little technique and style to get in and out of some of these barriers or through some of the barriers.
Did you ever get your fingers pinched?
No, I guess I did a few times. You can, when you're coming through with the wheels, it's easy to hit your hand on the brake on the wheelchair. And I think if you do get into a wheelchair and try this, you'll find out right away that as you're coming through, you can hit the brake on the wheelchair and scrape your hand very easily.
You learn to protect your knuckles pretty quickly?
Yeah, they get cold when it's icy and snowy too.
On the slide here that shows you trying to get into the restroom, it looked like that would be kind of easy to get your hands caught if you
Yeah, I
weren't
think
watching.
it would. I thought the chair would go in to begin with, but it's pretty obvious that it won't fit.
Do you find yourself now looking at washroom facilities and restaurants and theaters when you go into them now?
Yes, I do. Yes.
How about this one? We were talking about steepness or ramps, and I don't know if the viewing public can really see it, but Mark's front end on his wheelchair is actually up in the air about 4 inches. The front wheels came up, and I remember when you first did that, you said something about, can I go all the way over?
Yeah, that's right. And I did have a fear that it would go back over, and I'm sure that it would have if I wasn't leaning as far forward as you could see right there in the picture.
Do you think your classmates would be willing to participate in an exercise such as this?
The few people, at least when I was going through the experience and that I've talked to, have expressed a desire to do it.
You made a comment to me shortly after we completed the project that you said, this is the most meaningful thing I've done since I got to dental school. You really hold by that still?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting and one of the best experiences that I've had to this point in dental school.
Did you really feel aware of your limitations right at that point, or you had mentioned that you went home and you kind of started thinking about some other things that we didn't put you through?
Yeah, the next day I realized that I had done some of the easier things, and getting out of bed in the morning and taking a bath, and there were a lot more things that physically as well as maybe mentally were much harder. I became aware of a lot more things.
How did your wife react when you told her that you were going through this kind of a program, and did you talk to her about what you ran into?
Yes, I did. She thought it was really fascinating, and as well as myself becoming more aware of the barriers, she is too now.
In setting up, say, an office or something like that, what would be some of the key things that you would really focus in on?
Well, it's kind of obvious from the film that to get there, you can't go up steps with a wheelchair. So I'd eliminate that.
The building could have an elevator.
The building could have an elevator. If the buttons are accessible, it's easy to get in the door. And that's another thing. The doors have to be wide enough, and should be room to wheel the wheelchair around and have plenty of access to the chair.
Now, many people with spinal cord injuries also have kidney problems and need adequate washroom facilities. What sort of washroom facilities would you look for when you're looking at space for a dental office?
One in which you could get into first. You saw in the film where there's several doors to get in. It's a little difficult. Plus, there has to be enough space and access to facilities in order to use them. Otherwise, it's no good.
Yeah, I guess, Paul, when you were saying had kidney problems and so forth, I guess I would look at just about anybody, and they at some point in their daily running around would have a kidney problem. And a lot of times I think if we just realize that there are building codes and that there are laws that prevent building in architectural barriers, perhaps we could eliminate a lot of those just in general construction. Things are happening, and I think the fact that Mark was willing to take the time to really go through and put up with some of these, I know there were some indignations that he went through, being in the elevator and having your classmate look over your head, that really makes a person feel small.
Why don't we take a look at some, we've talked about architectural barriers in a building. What about dental equipment per se? Are there specific types of dental equipment you'd want to avoid in wanting to make an office accessible for handicapped?
Yes, I think you saw in the film, too, that the chair in which the arm doesn't lift up and you can't adjust to get into, that kind of thing is very difficult.
How about units, dental units, hoses all over the floor?
Oh, such as you see here, that the arm goes up and it's easily accessible. So you can see the arm goes up. You can get the wheelchair right up next to the chair and adjust it to the right level. It makes everything so much easier and faster just to be able to slide over into the chair with no problems.
I think, again, we're pointing out that even though Mark was very acutely aware that he wasn't to use his legs and so forth, it's very easy to cheat. And the students that may want to go ahead and take on this kind of a task, really try and be involved with not using any of the muscles in the lower part of your body. It's really, really tough to do that. And Paul, you mentioned hoses and different cords and so forth. They are a problem. Not everybody's going to be able to flip their front end up so that they can get over that little cord, and their balance may be worse than Mark's was, and they may fall out.
How about carpeted offices? Did you find it easier to wheel your wheelchair over a carpeted surface versus, say, a tile or linoleum?
No, it's more difficult. You can feel the nap, especially of a loose carpet, which will pull your chair one way or the other, to the right or to the left, and it's a little more difficult. You have to use more arm muscles. It's a little harder.
Did you feel like in this whole episode, when we were in the x-ray area and in the dental operatory area, that the dentist was having to move things around all the time, just specifically for you? Did that make you have any frustrations or negative feelings about yourself at that time?
You do feel very obvious, and everybody's conscious of you because a lot more than normal. You're not treated necessarily as normal because you're in this wheelchair, which is like a foreign object, and in many instances, such as the one I was in, you're right out in the middle of the room. Everybody's sitting there looking at you. You're pretty obvious.
Yeah, I'm pleased to know that you thought it was a meaningful experience. Do we have any more slides that we'd want to run through?
No, I think they've covered pretty well the ones that we have to. The other area was the fact that we did show a severely burned individual, and I think it's very easy to make them conspicuous also by the hesitations you may show when you're going to treat. And I think it's vitally important just to realize that each person that you're going to treat, as a dentist or as a technician or whatever, is a person, and that whatever we can do to eliminate the fears, it's really important to do that.
Thanks very much, Mark, for your participation in this program, and John, thank you for your consulting abilities and helping us lay out the course. The purpose of this videotape has been to describe a program whereby dental students at the University of Minnesota can increase their sensitivity and awareness of various architectural barriers which prevent many disabled individuals from receiving the appropriate dental care. And we hope that having viewed this film, it might make you more aware of some of these barriers, and hopefully in the future, as you're setting up your offices, eliminate these barriers from your dental office construction.
You've been listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused Listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused and redistributed for nonprofit use. Please attribute materials to the University of Michigan School of Dentistry and redistribute under this same license. For more information on how this and other University of Michigan School of Dentistry recordings may be used, visit www.dent.umich.edu/license.